I remember the moonlight catching the edge of the rearview mirror on that night. The same night I had 3 full garbage bags in the trunk of my car. The city lights behind me flickered through the window, but all I could focus on was the weight of those bags. They were stuffed with clothes, shoes, and makeup containers I had once cherished. It felt as though each lurch of the car pressed an invisible hand against my chest, reminding me that I was about to toss out things that had brought me a very particular sense of comfort. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles ached. At the dumpster across town, I took a deep breath and cut the engine. The street was dim, illuminated only by a single flickering street lamp. I glanced around, hoping nobody was strolling by at that late hour. My heart thudded. I opened the trunk, lifted one bag, and hauled it to the dumpster's edge. My heartbeat roared in my ears. In that moment, flashes of memory, wearing a silky lavender blouse in front of the mirror at home, running my fingertips over the lace sleeves, relishing the texture, came rushing in. Then I blinked hard, hoisted the bag over the lip, and let go. The clatter as it hit the bottom made me wince. I repeated this twice more, emptying the trunk of every item that reminded me of Catherine, a name I had chosen for myself on certain nights when no one was around. Each bag seemed heavier than the last, not just in weight, but in regret. By the time I was done, I felt my shoulders trembling. This would be the final time, I told myself. After all, I was an adult, supposedly secure in my day-to-day life, working a respectable job. I couldn't keep indulging in something that made me feel exhilarated and then horribly ashamed. This was it. I slammed the trunk shut, started the car, and drove home in silence. The next morning, my alarm buzzed its usual headache-inducing tune at 6. I rolled over in bed and stared at the ceiling for a while, letting my mind wander through the events of the previous night. I tried to lock away any lingering thoughts of regret, but a dull ache in my chest reminded me of the loss. There was something oddly comforting about those clothes and the ritual, choosing a dress, laying out the foundation and lipstick in neat lines, picking shoes, even though I could barely walk in some of them, practicing movements in front of the mirror, and trying on a new wig if I felt like it. Now, as I sat on the edge of my bed, the thought of having thrown it all away brought a strange sense of emptiness. I gathered my scattered composure and got ready for work. My workplace was a small local accounting firm. My desk was tucked in the far corner near the break room. It wasn't exactly thrilling, but the hours were steady, and I had been there long enough that most people left me alone. Only one person at the office asked more than a casual greeting. Yolanda, a colleague a few years older than me. She was tall, with a quick wit that often caught me by surprise. That day, she was making coffee in the break room when I trudged in at 8:30. She noticed the slump in my shoulders immediately. "Tough morning?" she asked, passing me a mug of freshly brewed coffee. "Something like that," I replied, cradling the mug with both hands. The warmth felt good against my palms. "Want to talk?" Yolanda leaned against the counter. Her expression was patient, lacking any trace of judgment. I almost told her right then. The words pressed against my lips. I threw away my dresses and shoes, and I feel like I've tossed a piece of my own identity in the trash. But I couldn't make myself say it. Instead, I forced a half smile. "Just feeling a bit off. Didn't sleep too well." She nodded. "Well, let me know if you need to chat. I'll be around." She handed me a sugar packet, then headed to her desk. The office routine swept me up for the rest of the day. Spreadsheets, phone calls, sorting through receipts, mundane tasks that dulled my thoughts. By the time I drove home, the sun was already low in the sky, painting the horizon with streaks of orange and lavender. I let out a long sigh as I stepped into my apartment. The silence inside felt suffocating. My eyes wandered toward the closet as if expecting to see a row of dresses, Instead, I found only my usual button-down shirts and slacks. I shut the closet door quickly and turned on the TV to blot out the emptiness. Days melted into a routine of work, occasional grocery shopping, and evenings spent in front of mindless shows. On weekends, I sometimes visited a bookstore just to pass the time, but a constant pang in my chest reminded me of what I had done and why I had done it. I wanted to escape the cycle, the rush of wearing clothes that felt so right in one sense, then the crushing shame that drove me to purge. Yet I couldn't stop thinking about that green velvet dress. It was from eBay, an impulse purchase I had made one late evening, hands trembling as I keyed in my payment details. It had arrived in a plain box, and the first time I wore it, I was astounded at how well it fit. The soft fabric clung gently to my body. The color felt regal, and a quiet thrill danced along my arms. But that was gone, I reminded myself. I'd thrown it away. Almost a month passed before something shifted inside me again. One Friday night, I was flipping channels and stumbled on a movie scene that showed a vintage clothing boutique. The camera panned across racks of shimmering dresses, bold patterns, and delicate lace sleeves. My heart clenched. A subtle hunger crept up, whispering, "You could just look online. You don't even have to buy anything." I tried to ignore it at first, but eventually I succumbed and opened my laptop. I typed green velvet dress into the search bar. The images filled my screen with possibilities, each one drawing me in. There was one that was especially appealing, somewhat similar to the one I'd had, and I couldn't tear my eyes away. Instead of letting my impulse carry me, I closed the laptop. I paced around my living room. The cycle was threatening to start again, and I felt powerless to stop it. On one hand, I longed for that private comfort, the sense of quiet joy that came from seeing Catherine in the mirror. On the other hand, I dreaded the next wave of shame that always seemed to follow. That weekend, I found myself in a local cafe trying to distract my thoughts with a cappuccino and a paperback novel. The air smelled of roasted beans, and most tables were occupied by people glued to laptops or chatting with friends. Midway through my drink, Yolanda walked in. She spotted me and smiled. "Fancy seeing you here," she said, sliding into the seat across from me without waiting for an invitation. "Usually you hide at home on weekends." I shrugged. "Had to get out for a bit." She placed an order at the counter and returned to me. She studied my face, taking in the circles under my eyes. "Everything okay? You seem on edge." "Just restless," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. She leaned forward. "I mean it when I say you can talk to me. Whatever it is, I won't judge." For a moment I wrestled with the idea of telling her. My inner voice taunted me. "She'll think you're strange. She'll never look at you the same again." But Yolanda's kindness over the years had built a foundation of trust. My breath caught in my throat, and I hesitated for what felt like a solid minute. "I used to have another side of me," I began haltingly. "Something that brought me comfort. I got rid of it, and now I'm missing it." She nodded. "And you're afraid to bring it back?" I opened my mouth, closed it, then finally said, "Yeah. That's it in a nutshell." Yolanda reached across the table and patted my hand. "You might not need to throw it out again. You can find a way to keep it without feeling you have to punish yourself for it. People have all sorts of aspects to their lives. If it's important, it might deserve some space." I felt my face burn. My eyes flicked around, worried that someone might overhear, but the clamor of other conversations made it unlikely. I drew in a breath, looked her in the eye, and managed to say quietly, "I sometimes like to wear dresses. It's not something I share with anybody." Her expression didn't change. There was no recoiling, no confusion. She remained calm, her voice gentle. "Do you mean you cross-dress?" I swallowed the lump in my throat, barely managing a nod. She gave my hand another reassuring pat, then withdrew. "Thanks for telling me," she said. I stared down at my cappuccino. My mind swirled with relief, fear, and a vague sense of hope all at once. I had never admitted it openly to another person, yet she was sitting here unshaken, meeting my eyes with something that looked like acceptance but didn't feel condescending or pitying. We talked until our coffee cups sat empty. She didn't press me with too many questions. Instead, she let me talk at my own pace. I explained how I felt most nights, an internal pull to wear something soft, a sense of calm in seeing a different reflection in the mirror. But then came the shame, the fear of how others would react, the tears of frustration. Eventually, that fear would overwhelm me so completely that I'd end up throwing everything away in a desperate attempt to fix myself. Over and over, the cycle repeated. "I'm sorry," Yolanda said softly. "That sounds exhausting." "Yeah," I replied, barely above a whisper. She fiddled with a napkin, folding and unfolding it. "Listen," she began, "I know it might not help much, but I don't think there's anything wrong with you wanting to express this side of yourself. It's a personal thing, and it doesn't hurt anyone. It might be worth considering if you can find a way to accept it without the guilt." I tensed at that word, so close to the one I was trying to avoid, but she meant well. I nodded. "I'm just not sure how." She nodded back, offering me a small smile. "One step at a time. For starters, maybe don't purge your closet again. Let it be. If you need a friend, I'm here." The conversation lingered in my mind long after I left the cafe. It felt surreal, as though I had revealed something vulnerable, and instead of rejection, I'd found a listening ear. That evening at home, I sat on my couch in silence, replaying her words. Maybe I could try not to repeat the same destructive pattern. Maybe, if I gave myself room to breathe, the shame wouldn't be so crushing. But at that moment, my closet was empty of anything that reminded me of Catherine. On Monday, Yolanda shot me a warm smile at the office, and I felt my nerves settle. We didn't bring up the conversation again right away, but there was an unspoken understanding. Throughout the week, I felt a subtle sense of ease, as if a small piece of that shame had peeled away. When Friday rolled around, I found myself online once more, scrolling through dresses. I lingered on a listing for a green velvet dress, almost identical to the one I had once owned. My heart fluttered at the thought of wearing it again. Another wave of guilt tried to worm into my mind, but I paused, remembering Yolanda's words. My finger hovered over the buy button. I shut my laptop and paced the room. The next morning, I went back to the listing, and I purchased it. While waiting for the dress to arrive, I caught myself daydreaming about how it would feel draped over my shoulders. The tracking updates told me it would be delivered on Wednesday. By the time that day arrived, I was so distracted at work that Yolanda lightly teased me during lunch. "Your head's in the clouds," she said. "What's up?" I lowered my voice. "I bought the dress," I admitted, feeling both anxious and excited. Her eyes lit up, but her tone was casual. "That's great. I hope it fits you the way you want." I gave a shaky laugh. "Yeah, me too." That evening, I left the office early, heart pounding the entire drive home. A package sat on my doorstep. I scooped it up and rushed inside, locking my door. I opened the box carefully, like it was a rare treasure. The color was a rich green, catching the light in a way that made it shimmer. My hands trembled slightly as I slipped out of my work clothes and pulled the dress on. It was snug but not tight, the hemline falling just around my knees. The fabric felt soft against my skin. Looking in the mirror, I could hardly breathe. It was the first time in weeks that I felt a flicker of that old sense of comfort. For a few minutes, I simply turned this way and that, studying the reflection. The next urge was almost automatic. I wanted to complete the look, but I had no heels, no wig, and no makeup. I shook my head. One step at a time, I told myself. I had the dress. That was enough for tonight. Later, as I sat on my couch wearing the dress, a wave of guilt tried to sneak in. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Maybe I could stop the cycle here. Maybe I could learn to keep Catherine's clothing in my closet without letting shame dominate me. I wasn't entirely confident, but at least I was willing to try. The next day, Yolanda and I shared a quick coffee in the break room before the day started. The hum of the office outside the door provided a muted backdrop. "Did it arrive?" she asked in a low voice, glancing to make sure no one was in earshot. I nodded. "It did. I wore it last night." "And how did it feel?" My lips curled into a small smile. It felt really good. Then guilt started to creep in, but I managed to calm down. I kept telling myself it's okay to have it. She reached out and squeezed my shoulder gently. "I'm really happy for you." A few weeks passed, and I began to grow more comfortable. I ordered a simple pair of black heels online, some new makeup items, and started practicing again. Each time, I prepared carefully, with less panic. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the wig I'd bought to replace the old one I'd thrown out. I taught myself new ways to blend foundation, new eyeliner techniques. It felt like rediscovering something that had been locked away. Though I still felt that twinge of apprehension from time to time, I fought to keep it from ruling me. One Saturday, Yolanda invited me to her apartment. I was nervous, uncertain if she intended for me to share more. When I arrived, she opened the door with a cheery greeting. Her apartment was bright and warm, filled with potted plants and a cozy rug. She'd ordered takeout, and we sat on her couch, sipping iced tea and picking at the food. The conversation started off casually, office gossip, a few jokes about the dreadful coffee machine. Eventually, though, she brought up the subject directly. "I was thinking," she said, brushing a stray hair from her face, "if you ever feel comfortable enough, I could help you with makeup or help you figure out outfits. I'm no expert, but it might be fun." My heart pounded in my chest. The idea of letting someone else see Catherine up close made me nervous, but there was a part of me that was intrigued too. "I'd like that," I said quietly, after a moment of hesitation. She beamed, and a sense of relief flickered in her eyes. "No pressure, just whenever you feel ready." We finished our takeout. Before I left, Yolanda offered a quick side hug. "Thanks for trusting me," she said. That night, while staring at my reflection in the bedroom mirror, I thought about how different life could be if I could share a bit of Catherine with someone without feeling haunted by shame. Perhaps this was the next step. The following morning, with my nerves twisted in knots, I texted Yolanda. "I'd like your help. Maybe next weekend?" Her reply came almost immediately. "Absolutely. Can't wait." The days crawled by. Friday evening arrived and I drove to Yolanda's place, a small suitcase in the trunk carrying the dress, a few other outfits, and the makeup I had purchased. As I climbed the stairs, a million possibilities and worries collided in my brain. Would I panic once I was dressed? Would I lose my nerve? I almost turned around and left, but I forced myself to knock on her door. She greeted me with a comforting smile. We settled in her living room, where she'd set up a standing mirror against the wall. A small table nearby held brushes, palettes, and makeup wipes. On a rack she had pulled out from her closet hung a few of her own dresses, in case we wanted to mix and match. "Ready?" she asked, her voice bright, but also gentle. I nodded, although my heart felt like it might burst from my chest. I slipped into the green velvet dress in her bedroom. When I emerged, she gave me an encouraging nod. Then she guided me to the chair by the mirror and started dabbing foundation on my cheeks. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to. she said as she worked. Just relax and let me do the painting. I closed my eyes, focusing on the sensations of the brush bristles against my skin. She was swift yet delicate, blending eyeshadow, shaping my brows, applying a soft shade of lipstick. I kept my gaze downward until she said, "Take a look." I lifted my eyes to the mirror. My breath caught in my throat. There I was, Catherine, looking back. The makeup was more polished than anything I'd ever done. My eyes seemed brighter, my lips shaped in a subtle curve. The green velvet dress draped perfectly. I looked up at Yolanda, who was smiling so wide I thought her cheeks might hurt. "I love it," I whispered, my voice trembling. She grabbed her phone. "Want me to take a picture for you?" I hesitated for a second. Letting someone else have a photo of me dressed this way was a major leap of trust, but my gratitude toward her overshadowed the fear, so I nodded. She snapped a couple of shots, then handed me the phone to look at them. A swirl of emotions rose in my chest: pride, relief, a touch of apprehension, but no immediate crash of guilt. For the next hour, we laughed and tried different accessories, different shoes, even a couple of her dresses to see how they fit. It was a strange, giddy experience, sharing something that had always been so private. At one point, Yolanda disappeared into her bedroom and returned with a clutch purse. "It goes perfectly with the green velvet," she said, winking. By the time we were done, I felt a mixture of exhilaration and nerves. The inevitable question floated in my mind. Would shame come roaring back later that night? I reminded myself of the recent shift in my life, how maybe I didn't need to purge at the first sign of anxiety. Before I left, Yolanda said softly, "Thank you for letting me be part of this. I hope it made you feel a little more confident." "It did," I admitted. "A lot, actually." The drive home was surreal. I changed back into my usual clothes, but the residue of that experience lingered like a pleasant hum in my thoughts. When I stepped into my apartment, I found myself braced for the onslaught of guilt. Yet it didn't strike as viciously as before. Instead, a quiet warmth remained. I put my suitcase back in the closet, not to hide it away forever, but simply to store it for next time. Over the following days, I experimented occasionally. Sometimes I would come home from work, eat dinner, then spend an hour or so dressed as Catherine. The more I allowed this side of me to exist without burying it, the easier it felt. Yolanda would check in, sometimes via text, sometimes with a quick question at work. "How's Catherine?" And it never failed to make me smile, though I'd always glance around to be sure no one else was listening. But as the cycle had taught me, it was never a straight line. One Monday afternoon, I overheard a couple of coworkers in the break room joking about someone they had seen on the street wearing clothes they deemed unusual. They were snickering, making offhand comments about, "What a freak." My chest tightened immediately. My appetite vanished. I slipped out of the room before they could see my face. For the rest of the day, I was a bundle of nerves, terrified that if I took one misstep or let my secret slip, I'd be the next target of ridicule. That evening, I was back to pacing in my living room, feeling a heavy knot of dread in my stomach. The fear of being exposed, of being the subject of cruel laughter, made me wonder if it was worth all this stress. I stared at the closet where the dress and heels now hung. In a rush of panic, I thought about grabbing a garbage bag again, loading everything, and dumping it somewhere far away. My thoughts spiraled. Maybe if I rid myself of it all, I'd never have to worry about being found out. Yet I remembered Yolanda's encouragement, the image of myself in the mirror, how calm and right it had felt. The internal tug of war left me exhausted. I picked up my phone and texted Yolanda. "Bad day. Heard some mean comments in the break room. Feeling unsettled." Her reply buzzed in minutes. "I'm so sorry. Don't do anything hasty. I can come over after dinner if you want. I hesitated, letting her see my apartment in disarray, my uneasy thoughts physically manifesting in the chaos of unwashed dishes and scattered clothes. Felt vulnerable. But I needed a friendly face, so I texted back, "Okay, thanks." When she arrived, I noticed she brought a small bag with her. She glanced around my apartment, gave a gentle smile, then set her bag down. "I brought something," she said, pulling out a pair of fuzzy socks. "They're cozy. I know it's silly, but on bad days, wearing these always makes me feel a little better." I laughed softly. "Thanks." We settled on the couch. I confessed how I'd almost bagged up everything again. She listened quietly, occasionally rubbing my shoulder when my voice grew strained. "Maybe you can keep it all right now, but just hold off on wearing anything until you feel more comfortable again," she suggested. "You don't have to throw it away. That doesn't fix anything, right?" I considered her words. She was right. Throwing everything out never truly made me feel better. It only provided a short-lived illusion of being normal before the emptiness set in again. "You're right," I admitted. She nodded. "So, let yourself take a break if that's what you need, but don't give in to that urge to destroy it all." We ended the evening watching some light-hearted show on TV, and I felt my pulse calm. She left around 9, and I sat there for a while thinking. The cycle was still there, lurking, but this time I had someone to remind me not to let it spiral into something destructive. I got up, walked to the closet, ran my fingertips over the velvet of that green dress, then closed the door gently. It remained, and so did I. In the weeks that followed, I made a conscious effort to find small ways to reduce the anxiety that always threatened to creep in. I took walks in the park after work, letting the rhythm of my footsteps clear my mind. I started journaling late at night, scribbling down every fear and worry, then shutting the journal as if locking those doubts away somewhere safe. I even ventured onto a few online forums, anonymously of course, where people discussed similar experiences. Sometimes, reading another person's journey helped me realize I wasn't alone. I confided a bit more in Yolanda. She eventually shared that she, too, had struggled with aspects of herself she felt reluctant to show the world, though it was a different set of circumstances. It made me feel less isolated, knowing she had her own corners of vulnerability. We never used terms like acceptance, but we did talk about letting ourselves be as we were. She would say, "Everyone has at least one thing they hide away. We're all just trying to figure out how to carry those pieces." That helped lighten the weight of it all. One Friday, she invited me to a small get-together at her place. "Just a few close friends," she said. "We'll have some snacks, watch a movie, super casual." Normally, I kept my social life minimal, worried that gatherings might lead to awkward questions. But Yolanda assured me her friends were laid back. When I arrived, a handful of people were already there, 2 from her gym, 1 from her college days, and her cousin Mark. They greeted me politely. I soon discovered they were all easygoing. Music played softly from a speaker. The living room was filled with comfortable chatter, and the night seemed pleasant enough. But my nerves still simmered beneath the surface. At one point, the conversation turned toward fashion. Mark casually mentioned how he admired a certain designer's dresses, and the others chimed in. My stomach lurched, but I managed a neutral nod. Then Mark turned to me. "What about you? Do you follow fashion at all?" My mind was suddenly blank. Yolanda shot me a quick glance that said, "You're fine. You don't have to share anything you're not comfortable with." I coughed and said, "I keep up with some trends," which was not entirely false, but not quite the whole truth either. Mark grinned. "I'm a bit of a collector. Shoes, jackets, you name it. I like how creative people can be with outfits." I gave a cautious nod. "It's interesting. Definitely more variety out there than people realize." He laughed and swirled his drink. Exactly. I wish more folks would just enjoy wearing what they want without worrying about judgments. Hearing him say that lifted a bit of tension from my chest. I found myself smiling. Yolanda offered me a small, knowing nod. She didn't push the topic further, and I silently thanked her for it. The rest of the evening passed smoothly. I left feeling oddly reassured that not everyone in the world was out to judge. A few days later, Yolanda and I grabbed lunch from a sandwich shop near the office. As we walked back, she said, "You were pretty quiet the other night, but Mark's a nice guy, isn't he?" I chuckled. "He is. He's easy to talk to, actually. I was just a little tense." She bumped my shoulder lightly. "Well, if you ever want a friend outside of me to talk about clothes and stuff, he's probably not going to freak out." Part of me considered it. Another part recoiled in fear. But I kept that in mind. The notion that I might slowly create a circle of people I trusted seemed daunting, yet it also hinted at a possible future where I didn't have to hide everything. The following weekend, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at my laptop. My reflection in the black screen made me hesitate. I was thinking of ordering a different style of dress, maybe something for colder weather, something with long sleeves and a high collar. I typed in the search terms. Before I could overthink it, I made a purchase. Then, with a trembling breath, I closed the laptop. While waiting for that package, I tried on the green dress again one evening, going through the small ritual of applying makeup, slipping on the heels, and letting myself exist in that headspace for a while. Then, in a sudden burst of bravery, I took out my phone and snapped a few photos of myself in the mirror. The quiet thrill of seeing the pictures made my cheeks warm. I deleted them from my phone's gallery almost immediately, but the act alone felt like a step I hadn't been brave enough to take before. The new dress arrived, a dark burgundy velvet piece with flared sleeves. I put it on, marveling at the way the fabric felt against my arms. It was more conservative in style than the green one, but it still carried that same sense of gentle comfort. I found myself daydreaming about wearing it somewhere beyond my apartment walls. The very thought set my pulse racing. Maybe one day, in a different city or at some obscure event, I could appear as Catherine without the fear of being recognized. For now, though, it remained a private dream. One late evening, after I'd tidied my apartment and settled down, my phone buzzed. It was Yolanda, asking if I was up for a chat. I called her back. "Mark's throwing a small party next week," she said. "He specifically told me to invite you. He's into hosting these cozy gatherings. Nothing fancy, but always good conversation." My heart thumped. "I appreciate the invitation, but do you think I'll be out of place?" Yolanda laughed softly. "You'll be fine. He really liked talking to you about fashion stuff. Just come as you are. No one's going to pry." I chewed on my lip. There was an unspoken possibility. I could show up as Catherine, but that idea made my stomach twist with nerves. I hadn't taken that leap outside my apartment except in Yolanda's living room, and showing up to a party as Catherine felt 100 times more frightening. I quickly shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. "I'll think about it," I said, a tremor in my voice. "Totally up to you," she said. "No pressure. Just know you're invited." That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. The anxious part of me wanted to forget the invitation, to stay safely in my routine. But a small, nagging voice inside wondered what it might be like to show even one other person who I was. Could I do that? Or would I spiral into a panic the next morning? A few days passed. I weighed the options. Eventually, I told Yolanda I'd come, but in my usual attire, as my typical workday self. She didn't push me one way or the other. She just said she was happy I'd be there. On the evening of the party, I dressed simply in jeans and a sweater. I stared at the closet containing my dresses, my heels, and my makeup. Fear still gripped me. I slipped out the door as I was, trying to calm my racing heart. Mark's place was bigger than Yolanda's, with an open living room that led to a small patio. He greeted me warmly, introduced me to a few new faces. I drifted in and out of conversations. Eventually, I found myself standing near a cluster of people discussing style trends, similar to the conversation at Yolanda's place. Mark caught my eye, gave me a friendly nod, and asked if I had any particular fashion interests. My mind froze briefly, but I managed a casual shrug. "Oh, I just like seeing how fabrics and designs change over time," I said, keeping it vague. He laughed. "Me too. I'm actually partial to velvet. Something about the texture." I nearly choked on my drink. The memory of the green velvet dress made my cheeks warm. Mark didn't notice my discomfort. He carried on talking about different velvet pieces he'd picked up from thrift shops. I was relieved he didn't zero in on me. For the rest of the party, we made polite conversation. But inside, I kept thinking, he might not judge me if he saw me in that dress. Yet the fear of exposing that part of myself to new people remained intense. As the party wound down, people trickled out in pairs or small groups. I helped Mark gather cups and plates into the sink. Yolanda was chatting with a friend near the door. Mark turned to me while rinsing some plates. "I'm glad you came," he said. "I enjoy our talks, even if they're brief. Feel free to drop by any time." His tone was genuine. "Thanks for inviting me," I replied. "It was fun." He smiled, then added in a quieter voice, "I know we don't know each other well, but if you ever need to talk about anything, fashion-related or otherwise, I'm around. I get the sense you're pretty private, and that's cool. Just know the door's open." He handed me a dish towel to dry my hands. His words, so calmly offered, gave me a moment of speechlessness. I managed a small nod. "I appreciate it," I said. Then I said my goodbyes, and Yolanda and I left together. On the drive home, a swirl of thoughts spun in my head. I felt strangely thankful to have crossed paths with people who seemed open-minded, or at least not quick to judge. Maybe in time, I'd find enough courage to show them a glimpse of Catherine. For now, though, I was satisfied that I hadn't felt the urge to purge my closet after that night. But comfort often brings new tests. A few weeks later, life threw me one. My supervisor at work announced that we'd be reorganizing some departments. The accounting firm was restructuring. New hires would be placed near me. We were told to clear out some personal items and reorganize desks. During this upheaval, an IT specialist came by to reconfigure computers. In the process, he accidentally opened some personal files on my work computer. My stomach hit the floor when I saw an old photo pop up, a small, poorly lit shot of me wearing a wig and a floral dress I'd owned months before. I must have mistakenly saved it to the wrong folder. He blinked, looked at me, then closed the image so fast I wasn't sure if he fully registered what it was. My heart hammered. I forced a casual chuckle. "That's, just an old costume photo." He seemed unruffled, focusing on his job. "No problem, man. Didn't see anything." He gave me a non-committal shrug and moved on. I scrambled to delete the file. My nerves were in shreds for the rest of the day. I locked myself in a bathroom stall at lunchtime, trying to calm my breathing. A wave of panic threatened. "Everyone will find out. They'll mock you. You'll lose your job." The familiar pattern of shame was rearing up, beckoning me to toss everything. Yolanda found me in the hallway later. She must have noticed my pale face. "What happened?" she murmured. I explained the mishap in hushed tones, my voice tight with anxiety. She put a hand on my arm. "It's okay. He said he didn't see anything, and even if he did, most IT guys are too busy to care." I swallowed hard. "But what if—" She shook her head. "Don't do this to yourself. You don't need to throw everything out again. You've come a long way. This is just a scare, not a guarantee that the world will turn against you." Her words anchored me. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. "Right," I muttered. "I'm trying not to freak out." She gave me a firm nod. "You've got this." For the rest of the week, I walked on eggshells, expecting snide remarks or jokes. None came. The IT specialist treated me normally, and my supervisor didn't call me in for any embarrassing meetings. Slowly, my panic subsided. I realized that my immediate reaction, wanting to purge, had lost some of its power over me. It was still there, a quiet whisper, but not as overwhelming as before. One evening, when I felt ready, I put on the green velvet dress again. I stood before the mirror, the memory of that near exposure still fresh. I wondered if I'd ever reach a point where I could walk outside wearing this dress, maybe with a well-styled wig and a pair of fashionable boots, and not drown in fear. It felt distant, but I allowed the thought to linger. Then I turned on some music and let myself move around my apartment, feeling the gentle swish of the velvet. My anxiety eased with each minute. Weeks turned to months. Throughout this period, Yolanda remained my confidant. Occasionally, we'd have a little session at her apartment, trying makeup, blending eyeshadows, sharing tips. Mark invited me to a couple more get-togethers. Each time, I learned something new about the people around me, a sense that I wasn't as alone or as odd as I'd feared. Yet the cycle was a stubborn thing. One Sunday morning, out of nowhere, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror, mid-application of lipstick, and felt a jolt of shame. My mind whispered, "What if you're deluding yourself? All it would take is one wrong step, and your life would unravel." I set the lipstick down, heart pounding. For a split second, I imagined going to the closet, collecting the dresses, wigs, heels, and throwing them all away. The old pattern called to me, seductive in its false promise of relief. I could be normal again, never worrying about being found out. But then I heard Yolanda's voice in my head. "That doesn't fix anything, remember? It just hides it until it comes back." I closed my eyes, breathing slowly. I convinced myself to let the feeling pass. I was tired of the cycle. I was weary of letting shame dictate every move. If I threw everything out now, I'd only feel that emptiness creep in again, stronger than ever. That evening, I went online and posted a short anonymous message on one of those forums. "I almost gave in and purged again today. Didn't do it. I'm still scared, but I'm trying to hold on." Dozens of supportive messages poured in from strangers who had been there, or were there, or had found ways to coexist with their fear. Their words, though from unknown faces, offered me a sense of solidarity. A few days later, Yolanda invited me over again. She'd gotten some new eyeshadow palettes and wanted to experiment. When I arrived, she set me up with brushes and a mirror. "Try this new palette. Let's see how it looks with your green velvet dress," she said, giving me a sly grin. I slipped into the dress, started blending different shades. She tried a shimmer on my lids. We laughed when I accidentally smudged eyeliner across my cheek. Eventually, I achieved a decent look, more subtle than some of my earlier attempts. I took a photo with my phone, capturing the moment. Instead of deleting it, I stored it in a hidden folder, an act of cautious optimism. Sensing a more reflective mood, Yolanda asked quietly, "Do you think you'll ever go out as Catherine? Maybe just a late-night drive or something?" The question made me pause. My heart fluttered at the thought. "I don't know. Maybe one day, but not yet. It's terrifying." She nodded, offering a supportive smile. "Understandable. No need to rush. Do it when you're ready." The next moment, her phone buzzed with a text from Mark. He was apparently nearby, wondering if she wanted to grab ice cream. Yolanda raised an eyebrow at me, We can say no if you're not comfortable. You're dressed as Catherine right now, and Mark doesn't know about this side of you for sure. But maybe you want to. I almost dropped the eyeliner brush. The mere suggestion of Mark seeing me like this made my pulse skyrocket. Yet a small part of me was curious. He seemed open-minded, but was I ready for that level of vulnerability? After a moment, I shook my head. "Not tonight," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry, Don't apologize," Yolanda cut in softly. "I just wanted to ask. I'll tell him we'll catch up another time." She texted him back, and that was that. I exhaled, relieved. I wasn't prepared to share this new identity with more people. At the same time, the idea of it, revealing Catherine to a small circle, felt less impossible than it had months before. By the time I left her apartment, night had fallen. I drove home in comfortable clothes, having changed back, but my mind lingered on how easily I'd stepped in and out of Catherine's world. It hadn't felt forced. There was no frantic push to purge. Even my occasional flickers of shame seemed more manageable. A few more months drifted by. I juggled work, quietly built a small social life with Yolanda's circle, and let Catherine's presence remain part of my routine. I hadn't done anything drastic like stepping out in public, and I still kept my secret from most people. But I no longer felt like I was on the verge of a meltdown each time I looked at those dresses. My closet had grown a little. Some new pieces, a couple of wigs in different styles, a modest range of makeup. Then one night, as I was clearing out old photos on my phone, I stumbled on the pictures Yolanda had taken months earlier. My heart squeezed. I sat down on my bed, flipping through them. The images showed me in the green velvet dress, eyes bright, posture poised. Catherine looked happy in those snapshots. I realized how far I'd come since that first time I wore the dress in front of Yolanda. I recalled each purge, those trash bags, the hiss of the dumpster lid, the emptiness that followed, and recognized how destructive that pattern had been. In that moment, I had a flash of memory, driving across town, lugging those bags of clothes, the sinking feeling in my stomach. It struck me how many times I'd done that, how many beautiful pieces I'd let slip from my grasp. The cycle had drained me, time and time again, leaving me feeling fragmented. I closed my eyes, letting the phone rest on my lap. The hush of the apartment felt heavy, but not stifling. I realized that I didn't want to purge again. The shame might never vanish entirely, but maybe it didn't have to own me. Maybe I could endure its presence, live with it in quieter moments, and still hold on to these items that brought me a sense of calm. My phone buzzed. It was Yolanda, sending me a silly meme. I replied with a thumbs up, then opened our chat history. So many times in recent months she had offered an ear, so many small gestures that kept me from spiraling. This was the longest stretch I'd gone without throwing everything away. I looked to my closet, envisioning the green dress on its hanger, a symbol of a life I once tried to hide, but now let exist. Setting my phone aside, I walked to the closet and opened it. I brushed my hand along the fabric of each dress. For the first time, I felt a steadiness I wasn't used to. I considered the possibility of wearing one of them tomorrow, simply for an hour in the evening, just to relax. The old pulse of fear lingered, but so did a new determination. I stepped away, leaving the closet door open. For a moment I simply stared at those dresses in full view. A small voice in my mind whispered, "Maybe next time I feel the urge to purge, I won't. Maybe I can keep these dresses where they belong, right here, part of my life." I remembered all the times I had said never again, the vow to discard that part of me, only to return and feel that pull. The cycle was still within me, humming like a machine that wanted to start again at the faintest sign of panic. But as the months went by, I had built a cautious sense of resolve. I thought about how wonderful it felt to wear that green velvet dress, how, when the guilt began to surge, I could choose not to obey it blindly. In the reflection of the closet mirror, I saw an image of myself, not half a person, not a secret that needed burying, but someone doing their best to navigate a tangled web of urges and doubts. The reflection seemed calmer now, steadier than all the times I'd stood here before. Maybe the cycle wouldn't vanish, but it didn't have to define me. That, more than anything, felt like a small victory. I lingered there for a minute, letting the quiet wash over me. Then I gently closed the closet door, turned off the light, and wandered back into the living room. Outside, the city hummed softly, and the night sky pressed against the windows. There was no big triumph, no sudden burst of confidence, just a fragile but growing sense that I could keep Catherine's clothes in my life without letting shame rule me. I sank onto the couch, remote in hand, flicking through channels. A commercial played, something about a new brand of shoes. I smiled faintly, thinking about how I once struggled to walk in heels, stumbling around my living room, laughing at myself while also feeling strangely proud. Maybe I'd try again soon, get more comfortable in them over time. Maybe I'd build enough confidence to step outside. And maybe I'd panic some days, but I wouldn't throw it all away. Not again. I grabbed a cushion and hugged it to my chest, staring at the TV without really absorbing what was on screen. I closed my eyes for a moment, recalling the warmth of the green velvet against my skin, the tickle of eyeliner on my eyelids, and the slow, steady beat of my heart when I gazed in the mirror and saw something I couldn't deny was part of me. The words circled in my mind, a quiet promise. Maybe next time, I won't purge. Maybe.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.